Hello, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon for our webinar on implementing the Australian Curriculum Mathematics version 9.0 for year 7 to 10. My name's Alex and I'm one of the secondary learning designers for secondary maths here at Oxford University Press. I'm joined today by my colleague Chris, who'll be telling us a bit later about the prices and availability of our series Oxford Maths 7 to 10 for the Australian curriculum. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the many lands on which we create and share our learning resources. We acknowledge the traditional owners as the original storytellers, teachers, and students of the land we call Australia. We pay our respects to elders, past and present. We also extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. So to give you an overview of what we'll be looking at today, we'll start off with a summary of the key changes to the structure and content of the new Australian curriculum for mathematics version 9.0. And then we'll have a look at some challenges facing schools in the lead up to implementing the Australian curriculum. And then we'll flip those challenges into opportunities. After that, I'll introduce you to Oxford Maths 7 to 10 for the Australian curriculum. And we'll have some time at the end for questions. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, pop them into the Q&A box and we'll get to them at the end. So let's have a look at a summary of the key changes to the structure and content of the curriculum. So why is it changing? The Australian curriculum is reviewed every 6 years or so, and the 2020 to 2021 review resulted in version 9.0. The idea was that we need to have a curriculum that's up to date, has a strong evidence base, and aligns with expected world standards. And this curriculum is supposed to be more stripped back and teachable with a focus on what's essential, so students have a better chance at mastering essential content. And so we have a focus on depth as opposed to breadth. So how is the structure changing? What's not changing is that there's still 3 dimensions of the learning areas, the general capabilities, and the cross-curriculum priorities. You might know the general capabilities as 21st century skills. Most of the content descriptions, elaborations, and achievement standards have changed. From this slide, we can see that there's a much greater focus on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures, and we'll talk a bit more about that later in the presentation. In addition, you'll be familiar with the old strands. We had paired strands of number and algebra, measurement and geometry, and statistics and probability. And we had 13 sub-strands and 4 separate proficiency strands. The strands have now been decoupled. So we have separate number, algebra, measurement, space instead of geometry, statistics and probability. There's no longer any sub-strands, and the proficiency strands are now embedded in content descriptions. So this allows you to pair different content together. Instead of always looking at number and algebra, you can look at number and statistics or measurement and probability. It allows a much greater flexibility than the old paired strands. All of this is summarized in a handy guide to the new Australian curriculum, version 9.0. It's available as a downloadable resource today in this webinar, but you can also scan this QR code to access it. In general, so there's some other changes. The most notable of which is the algorithmic thinking content that's been added from years 3 to 10. And we can have a look in more detail at what's changed at each year level. So here are some changes from year 7. We will be sharing these slides with you, and all of this information is included in the guide to the curriculum. So don't worry if you don't catch everything. So for year 7, for example, we can see that some content's moved down from year 8, like the relationship between pi and the features of a circle now appears for the first time in year 7. And then in year 8, they'll move on to finding the area of a circle to see a greater progression of the skills from year on year. We have Pythagoras' theorem appearing now in year 8 for the first time, as opposed to year 9. We also have one variable linear inequalities with graphical and algebraic techniques now appearing in year 8. And you might notice if I continue flicking through that we see statistical investigations, repeated chance experiments and simulations also appearing. In year 10, we have an introduction to networks, a greater focus on linear inequalities and graphing solutions as a region on the Cartesian plane. And there's also logarithmic scales in applied context added as well. And then we have the Year 10 optional content. This was previously known as 10A. And so there's things like combinatorial principles and notation that's been added to probability. And there's also been some things removed like polynomials, exponential equations, and three-dimensional problems with Pythagoras' theorem. Some of the content's been removed entirely, and some has been taken to the core Year 10 content. So all Year 10 students should be seeing it. So what are some challenges facing schools in the lead up to implementing it, the new curriculum? So we've identified the top 3 challenges facing teachers as they implement the new Australian curriculum. So first of all, the knowledge and skills gap in maths classrooms, one I'm sure you're all familiar with, as well as teacher shortages and burnout, especially post-COVID. And then lastly, integrating First Nations content with that greater focus on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures embedded throughout the curriculum. So, challenge 1, the knowledge and skills gap. Current research, which includes research conducted by Oxford University Press in 2021, indicates that there's a knowledge and skills gap in secondary maths classes across Australia. And I know I'm preaching to the converted, and we all know that this is true, that there's a gap of 1 to 5 years and more, and it's widening. In the average Year 7 classroom, you might have students working at a Year 3 level, and then others are working at a Year 9, Year 10 level. And as the teacher, you somehow have to address all of these students and make what you're teaching and what they're supposed to be learning relevant to everyone so all of your students can achieve. And at times, this feels like an impossible task. On top of that, we have declining PISA results since 2018. And even though the 2022 PISA results didn't show further decline, it did show that 51% of Australian students failed to demonstrate that they have more than basic skills, which means that they're really not meeting the standards that they need to. We had 1 in 5 Year 7 students in the bottom 2 bands for numeracy. So 20% of Australian Year 7 students are struggling with maths. On top of that, we have nearly 80% of students didn't even really try in the PISA test, so they're not even seeing the point of doing it. So there's huge problems in maths classes. And students, as soon as they feel like they're behind, they'll feel less confident, more anxious, they'll engage less, they'll achieve less, and then that has a huge flow-on effect in their results in Years 10 to 12 as well, where they've got all of these little gaps in their knowledge. For teachers, the task of differentiation results in a huge amount of preparation time because all of a sudden, instead of writing 1 lesson plan, you're writing 25. It means that teachers need good resources, good training, and frankly, it brings us on to the second challenge, enough teachers trained to teach maths. There are scary headlines from across the country about the teacher shortages schools around Australia are facing. Teachers just quit, and it's understandable given the pressure that's facing modern teachers and the expectations we place on them as a society. So hundreds of teaching positions remain unfilled. We know every time you look, schools are looking for applicants. Where they used to get many applications for a single position, now they struggle to get 1 or 2. And then if you're looking for a maths teacher, you might as well give up because over 20% of teachers are already teaching out of field, and that number is much higher in maths. There are so many teachers who aren't trained maths teachers who are really bravely taking on that challenge and stepping in front of a maths classroom when it's not potentially their most confident area to teach and taking it on because they know it's important, but it's not fair on them, and it's not fair on the students to have teachers who aren't fully trained in the area they're trying to teach. We have high rates of burnout reported by teachers since the COVID pandemic, and I don't think that's being talked about anywhere near as much as it should be. And that's just in metro areas. It's much worse again in rural areas where we have reports of teachers, classes not having a teacher in person, having an adult sit with them while the teacher might be sick, and so they're posting things online for the students to complete. On top of that, you have huge pressure on graduate and early career teachers not getting the support they need, where they really do need a mentor and help to guide them through those really tough first couple of years of year 10 of teaching. They often are handed a lot of responsibility as soon as they start and really lack the support they need. And that means that they're far more likely to be part of the 40% of teachers who leave the profession within 5 years. And I'm pretty sure that the number is actually closer to 3 now. So teacher shortages is a huge issue facing the country. And it's not coming up enough about what's doing it and coming up with actual practical solutions. Our last challenge is a bit different, but it's looking at the First Nations content and incorporating it accurately, meaningfully, and respectfully. It's a cross-curriculum priority in the Australian curriculum version 9.0, so it's really important that we talk about how it can be implemented in classrooms around the country. First Nations content appears in the elaborations for the Australian curriculum mathematics at years 7 to 10, though it does, of course, also appear in primary maths. So what are the issues? Like, we know that only 2% of us teachers in Australia identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. And the problem is not that teachers around the country don't want to cover this content. It's like they don't want to do it badly. You want to do it accurately, meaningfully, and respectfully, or it just feels like a tokenistic coverage. And that feels like it's not engaging with the content in the meaningful way that's intended. ACARA has recommended that schools contact local elders for support, but who has the time to do that with all the teacher shortages and differentiation planning that you're doing already? Depending on where your school's located, it can also be really hard to find good local resources and contacts. And disappointingly, ACARA haven't really released a lot of materials to support quality teaching, despite promising that they would. So let's have a look at some of the elaborations. I'm not going to read these out, but they are collected here together for you to view in the slides. But what you can see is that they are found in all of the strands across years 7 to 10. They appear in different ways. And given the lack of support, it can be really hard for a school or teacher to engage with these in a way that feels meaningful to them and to their students. So how can we flip these challenges and turn them into opportunities? So we'll have some strategies to deal with the knowledge and skills gap, some strategies to work together despite staff shortages, and some ideas on how to be the change by integrating this First Nations content in relevant, meaningful, and respectful ways. So opportunity 1. So here's a chance to engage with some research. So in 2021, OUP Australia worked with the Australian Maths Trust to conduct research into the knowledge and skills gap. With over 160 secondary maths teachers were surveyed and all of their responses were collated. And these findings, together with a list of recommended strategies, were published in a report that's available for free. And we updated this report earlier this year. The report is available to you as a handout as part of today's webinar. You can also access it by scanning this QR code. For further information about and discussion about this, the Knowledge and Skills Gap report, there's a YouTube roundtable discussion with different participants that you can watch to get some more ideas about what you could do. The key findings. Unsurprisingly, the transition from year 6 to year 7 is the biggest challenge for students and teachers. So it's really important to know that that could well be the case and to identify any issues with year 7 students early on so that any gaps can be rectified as early as possible. The biggest gaps appear at year 7 and year 9, so a focus could be made on these years. Differentiating teaching is the key to success, but that's easier said than done. So it's important to help all students develop problem-solving skills for the real world, even if it's not quite at the level, but to see them see the relevance of the maths in their life, and then they'll be able to create the connection they need to grow with further their mathematical skills. And then to also be really aware that maths anxiety is a real issue. Many students get anxious around maths as a subject in general, or it might just be tests and exams, which come up so often in maths. So it's important to make your classroom a safe space to discuss it and to discuss strategies to deal with it so that the student any students facing maths anxiety can overcome it confidently and really start to build their confidence in maths. Some other things, new curriculum, it's a chance to try something new. If something was working, or you know that there was an area of the curriculum that was causing students anxiety in the past, you could look at it. Perhaps it's changed a bit in the new curriculum. Perhaps the focus is different. There's a lot of focus on students conjecturing and experimenting. So maybe that's a way to engage students in a new way, especially with algebra, which is quite foreign and abstract in comparison to any maths they might have seen before. It's important to make the maths engaging and local to the students. They'll use maths every day, and Australian adults who don't have those functional maths skills struggle. And so it's important to give the students the skills they need to survive for the rest of their lives. Any specific gaps in student understanding are really important to rectify, because it might just be one small thing, and the time spent with them fixing that gap might help them to really run further with maths in the long run. Maths, it's really important to focus on the small wins. Getting 100 on a test is an amazing feeling, but every increase in a student's results, every little thing they get right or do better, it's worth celebrating. So they build up that confidence and have the trust in themselves that they can do maths and that they are a maths person after all. So the other advice I would give is that the Australian curriculum is full of elaborations. There's so many in comparison to the content descriptions. And so if you have got a class that is struggling, or students that really need that extra support just to get them up to the standards suggested in the achievement standard and the content descriptions, then you can just focus on the key content and look at ways to make sure students are really engaging with that and meeting that level before looking at the different elaborations to see ways that they can explore that content. So some strategies for dealing with the staff shortages. I've just told you that the curriculum's different, but a lot of your resources and existing lesson planning, you'll be able to reuse. So don't go throwing everything out the door right now just because you've got to implement a new curriculum. You should be looking at what's the same, what's similar, and what's different and what's completely new, and then planning from that point. And you'll probably find that 3/4, 80% of all of your past material you'll be able to reuse, which is really good, because all of the hard work that you've put into all of your resources in the past, you'll be able to use them again. Other things to remember is that there's so many online resources developed by organisations like the Australian Mathematical Science Institute, the Australian Association of Maths Teachers, and the Australian Maths Trust, just to name 3, for example. There's so many resources online that are aligned to the curriculum or come very close to it, so that you don't need to go around reinventing the wheel. You can simply use what's available to you and make it work for your class. Don't go doing everything yourself. It's okay to use what other people have provided for you. It's also really important as a teacher to not keep these issues to yourself. Talking with other teachers, letting anyone know that you're struggling is really important, not just for your class and your teaching, but for your own mental health and well-being. There are teacher networks like the AAMT or your state territory mathematics teaching associations where you'll be able to find like-minded teachers at different events and grow your network. There's also heaps of things like Facebook groups and online groups that you can use to share resources, support each other. And if you haven't accessed any of these online support groups, I'd really encourage you to reach out. You can adopt a whole school approach to curriculum planning. So instead of everyone doing everything, you should be splitting work up, making sure there's no double up, and working together to get everything put together. Not only will that help make things a bit more consistent, it will save so much time and effort in the long run. And even if you do, I get it, you like having, it's nice to have control over everything that you do. But it's important to be able to improve outcomes and work together to split up the work, because it will save you a lot of time. The fourth tip is to support your grad teachers. As we mentioned, they're likely to drop out. They're likely to be burnt out, because those first few years of teaching where you're setting up all of your resources, they can be really tough. So it's really important to give them the support and make sure they aren't taking on too much right at the start, so that they can be the teachers that we need in the future. One of our authors was telling me about when he was at a networking event at the end of last year and was talking to a friend who had been told that they were suddenly teaching senior specialist maths the following year, and they didn't have any resources prepared. And they were looking at spending all of the summer holidays preparing these resources. But by having that discussion together, our author was able to supply a lot of the teaching and learning resources that the other teacher would need to successfully teach the Year 12 course. And ultimately, so much time and preparation was saved just by being at that networking event and sharing resources and being willing to share them, and not seeing them as just your own resources, but seeing them as something that the students can really benefit from and the teacher can save so much time from. That's just one example of how working together can really help everyone and move it, especially at this time. It's really difficult. Our last opportunity is to look at some ways we can integrate the First Nations content in relevant, meaningful, and respectful ways. And we worked with our series consultant, Suzanne Garvey, to come up with these tips. So the first tip is to not include First Nations content in every topic. You can be selective and make it count. So that means that even if you only touch on it once or twice in a year in your class, and as long as you make it relevant and meaningful, that's still better than nothing, and it's way better than making tokenistic references all the time. So we've got some ideas at each year level. Again, we'll be sharing these slides with you, so I'm not going to read out everything, but I will point out a couple. So for example, in Year 7, in measurement, you look at the different, you look at parallel lines, transversals, and angles, and you could take a chance to have a look at how all of these appear in First Nations artwork. And so you could try and find examples of local roots to your school, or look at examples around the country and try to connect it to specific artworks and artists. So students can see that parallel lines and transversals have been used by First Nations peoples for a long time in their art. We can also see that in Year 9 they have traditional number systems. So we look at real numbers, rational numbers, irrational numbers, and solving problems in Year 9 number. And so you can look at traditional number systems used by different First Nations groups. So there's a group in the Northern Territory who use base 5 instead of base 10. So there's an opportunity to have that discussion about how numbers are used, why they are used like that. And so students can start to reflect on our base 10 number system and start to question why and how things are done. The last one I'd like to point out is this one about looking at perhaps an artwork of the local area and comparing it with the maps we use, maybe Google Maps, to try and identify landscape features. And you can compare our modern mapping to traditional methods of sharing knowledge of different land features of rivers and waterways, and seeing how that's represented. And that's all coming under the networks, introduction to networks content description, because that's another way to represent this information. And so you can compare it all at different ways of transferring knowledge about the local area. So there's lots of ways you can do that. The second tip is to reach out to local elders and other experts if you can. And if not, you want to look for resources developed by, or perhaps just in conjunction with, First Nations peoples. And I've got some here with you for you to share with you. When you get the slides, these are live links, so you'll be able to click on them and be taken straight there. So there's a public lecture by Professor Chris Matthews. He wrote most, if not all, of the elaborations, or First Nations elaborations in the maths curriculum. I'd really encourage you to watch this lecture. It goes for about an hour, and it gives you an idea of why these elaborations were included, what the intention is for really engaging especially First Nations students in maths, and making everyone see that it's important. The AAMT has a Make It Count resource. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Mathematics Alliance also has resources. Chris Matthews is actually the chair of ATSIMA, so I'd encourage you to check out their website. And there's also UMI Deadly Maths as well, and that's just some of what's available. If you go out and look, there is so much. And as I said, it's okay to just do a little bit, see if it works, and if it did, great, do it again the next year. And if it didn't, try something else. It's okay to have it not succeed. What you want to do is keep trying to engage the students in the First Nations content so that they can see it's really important as well. So now I'd like to introduce you to Oxford Maths 7 to 10 for the Australian curriculum. So this is a teaching and learning resource purpose-written for the Australian curriculum version 9.0, and it's designed to help you deliver differentiated instruction that meets the needs of all students and makes maths accessible for all. At each year level, you can choose from the following components. So we do have the traditional student print book with digital access as well. You can forego the student print book and go digital only. And schools who adopt the student book will receive complimentary teacher access, and the Teacher O-Book Pro has specific teacher-only resources to help teachers through to make best use of this product. So some key features. Before I go into that in too much detail, in the handouts you'll find login details for a sample account, which I'll go through later. The Year 7 curriculum grid, Chapter 1 teaching program, some teacher notes, work solutions, and an investigation free for you to have a look at. So some key features of the series. So each student book comes with complete access to loads of online resources and tools. Each chapter opens with an opening page. We have a list of the topics included in that chapter, a list of the prerequisite skills required for this chapter. We'll come back to that in a moment. Links to the curriculum in the Australian Curriculum 9.0 and any materials required, like a calculator. For each chapter, we have a diagnostic pretest online, which assesses whether students are ready to engage with the content in this chapter. This means that it's not assessing the content in the chapter, it's assessing what they need to know before they even start. So based on the results of the pretest, the platform creates a personalised learning pathway report based on their results. And if the students are found to either need to practice or learn a particular prerequisite skill, they're assigned an interactive skill sheet to address the gaps in prerequisite knowledge and skill so that they're ready by the end of that to engage with the chapter. We'll have a look at an example of a diagnostic pretest and interactive skill sheet later. When we go into a topic, we start with learning intentions that are provided in plain English. And because we've written this series as a continuum from years 5, 6 through to year 10, rather than standalone single year text, we have what we call inter-year links. And they allow related topics across the years to be viewed by students as part of the digital product. So here, for example, we have Year 7 1A links down to some support Year 5, 6 content, as well as some relevant content at Years 8 and 9. Students are able to access student book pages as well as supporting resources for any inter-year links from Year 7 to 10. And for support, there's a lot of supporting resources at that level to help them learn the skill. We have theory that's been written with the latest pedagogical research in mind, lots of diagrams, colour, and simple explanations to help students engage and understand the content. We have between 1 and 5 worked examples included for every topic, and they're written in a think-write format, so students can see what they should be thinking versus what they should be writing down on the page. And every worked example includes a video that just is someone working through through that question, so students can see what they should be doing and thinking about when they work through a similar question. Every topic includes helpful hints that cover things like common misconceptions, common mistakes, like don't forget to find a common denominator before you add fractions. And then useful mnemonics to help them remember things like SOHCAHTOA to help them remember their trig ratios. Halfway through a chapter, we have a checkpoint quiz to help students make sure they don't get too far through the chapter without checking to make sure they understood everything in the first half. We have an online checkpoint quiz as well that I will clarify does include different questions to those printed in the book, so students can do both sets of questions. And like every single online quiz in our maths products, these questions in the online checkpoint are auto-marked. So it's not setting these questions is not going to add to your marking time. It's auto-marked and students receive their results immediately. We have visual chapter summaries included. So this is a one-page summary of all of the content in chapter 1. We provide these as a downloadable resource, and I like to think that if I downloaded all of your 10 for year 7, I'd have a nifty little 10-page summary book ready to go. As part of the chapter review, we have Quizlet revision sets with all of the key glossary terms from the chapter, as well as an online chapter review with different questions to those that are included in the book. In the book, we have multiple choice, short answer, and analysis questions so students can engage with the content in different ways. Halfway through each book and at the end, we have semester reviews that provide a comprehensive review of material across multiple chapters. You're welcome to use these in any way that suits you best. We have 3 algorithmic thinking spreads included in each book. So it's one covering number and algebra skills, one for measurement and space, and one for statistics and probability. These use flowcharts, pseudocode, and block coding languages, all freely available to represent and analyze algorithms as suggested in the Australian curriculum. We're really lucky to have a partnership with the Australian Maths Trust. Each textbook includes 2 spreads, so that's 4 pages in total of questions developed by the Australian Maths Trust, and these are best described as low floor, high ceiling questions, where all of your students will be able to make a start and understand the start of the question, but it's a real challenge to get to the end, and students will need to work together to solve these questions. So that's the print book. Let's have a look at the digital platform. So our platform, Oxford Digital, includes an enhanced e-reader with hotspots to all the interactive resources. The Oxford Dictionary is built in. You can mark notes and share with your classes. You can group students, assign work, monitor engagement, and remember, assign all of those auto-marked assessments and receive instant results that are mapped to the curriculum. And our into-year links are much more than textbook pages. There's all of the resources included as well. We have content and tools from our partners, the Australian Maths Trust, Desmos, Learnosity, which helps us power our quizzes, and Quizlet. We're really excited to have a new partnership with ClickView, where we're creating and embedding more than 350 brand new key content videos. It's one video for every topic in every book to cover the Australian curriculum version 9.0 in its entirety. Each 3 to 5 minute video is designed to cover the key content, engage reluctant learners, and support every student in their learning and revision, and it supports flexible and remote learning. The first 200 videos will be ready for Term 1, 2025. So that's full coverage for Year 7 to 9, as well as about half of Year 10. So we're almost there in terms of coverage. So I've told you about it, but I think we need to have a look at the Student and Teacher OBOOK Pro. Okay. Today I'm going to be demonstrating a sample teacher account that we've created for Oxford Maths 7 to 10 Australian curriculum. Decided to present today's digital product walkthrough as a video rather than a live digital demonstration to make sure I cover everything you need to know. But you will be able to access and have a play with live samples of everything I'm about to show you in your own time after today's session. The login details for this sample will be shared with you after today's webinar. This is the homepage for Oxford Digital, and I'm entering the login details for the Maths sample account. I'm going to log in first as a teacher. I'll log in as a student later to show you how things work on the student side. But for now, let's look at what's available for teachers. As you can see, this is our library page, and any books I have access to will show here. I can see a copy of the Guide to the Australian Curriculum version 9.0, complete copies of the Year 7 to 10 student books, and a sample of digital resources and reporting functionality included with Chapter 1 of Year 7, which I'll walk you through in a moment. From this library page, I can download any of my titles for offline access using oBook Offline, and there are detailed instructions provided here showing how to do that. But for now, let's go back and take a look at the Year 7 sample. This is the welcome page. For these samples, you can see we've included some information about the changes to the curriculum. Normally, there isn't so much text here. At the bottom, you can see the notification section. Any work that you've assigned to students will show here. The tabs at the top help get you where you want to go more quickly. This is the home screen. The resources screen, I can view and assign any resource from the book. Assigned work lets you access and monitor all of the work you've assigned across any of your classes and check who has completed their work. And finally, the Reports tab provides an electronic markbook. I'd like to start by jumping into the student book, as it's possible to view and assign resources from within the e-reader. By clicking on Read, you can launch the product and open the e-reader. The interactive menu opens by default. You can expand each chapter to show every topic, but you can also minimize it to show more of the student book. I can also maximize the reading view at any time by clicking F11. The oBook e-reader has a number of inbuilt tools for teachers and students. The Book Content button opens up the menu whenever you need it. The Resources button allows you to view all of the resources on offer for each topic and chapter. As a teacher, you have access to all resources, including teaching programs, lesson plans, auto-marking quizzes, videos, class tests, and much more. And you can assign them to students from here. We'll do that in a moment, but I'll quickly show you the rest of the e-reader tools. The Notes button allows you to highlight and make notes on anything in the student book. You can see I've made one note here. In this note, I'm letting my students know that this material will be on the test. As a teacher, I can add and share this note with a single student, a small group, or the whole class using the Share button here. This functionality is really handy if particular students have missed some time in class and you want to direct their learning and help them catch up. The bookmarking functionality helps you to tag important pages in the book, but just so you know, the e-reader will automatically remember where you were at the end of the session and open up at that page the next time you log in. Every book comes with the Oxford Concise Australian Dictionary built in for free. I can type directly into the search bar like this, looking up sequence, for example, or I can select a whole sentence, click the icon, and I get every word defined. I can scroll through. One really exciting button I want to show you for maths is called the Inter-Year Link button. As a teacher using Oxford Maths, I have the ability to assign student book content and supporting resources from any year level that support Years 5, 6 through to Year 10 to any student at any year level. This is designed to help you easily support students in mixed ability classrooms at different stages of learning and ability levels to help them learn at their own pace. For this sample, we've loaded some support content from Years 5, 6, as well as some Year 8 content, but the full products have links to relevant content at each year level. Before I assign this work to a student who's struggling in class a little, I want to have a look at if it's suitable for them, so I can open it up and have a look. As you can see, the support content appears in a new tab here. For support content, there are no student book pages, just resources, but for Years 7 to 10, you can assign the student book pages plus any supporting resources. If I click on resources, I'm shown everything that's available for place value at a support level and can open a worksheet or an interactive and assign it to a single student, small group, or whole class. Let's go back to the e-reader tools. Clicking on the magnifying glass allows me to zoom in or out or reset to the default setting. For maths, we offer built-in access to a range of Desmos tools and calculators on every page, including the scientific calculator and the graphing calculator. Finally, you can use the navigation bar here to turn the page or go directly to a page of your choice. But for now, I'm going back to the start of Chapter 1 and will show you how to assign a resource to a Year 7 class. Here I am, back at the start of Chapter 1. I've decided I want all my students to take a diagnostic pretest to see how many of them have the prerequisite skills for this chapter and who might need to do some foundational catch-up work. I'm in the resources panel and I'm going to assign the diagnostic pretest to everyone in my class. Click tick this box here, and then I click assign. I'm taken to a calendar and can choose exactly when I want the test to be assigned and when it needs to be completed by, setting a start and end date for the test. And now I select my class, I'm going to assign it to everyone, and then I click apply. The system generates a name for the assignment, but I can change it if I want to. Each of the students will be notified of the assigned work, but I can also send them an email to make sure everyone is aware, so I'm going to do that. That's now been assigned. Before I log out and log back in as a student to complete the task, I want to show you a couple of quick examples of the video and interactive content we've added to these editions. I'll move to topic 1A. Here you can see all of the resources available for 1A. I can open anything I want and assign it from here as I've shown you, or I can close the panel and launch them directly from hotspots on the page. You can see some of the worked example videos that we've created.
Identify the place value of the 5.
There's one of these for every worked example in the books. That's over 700 in total. In addition, we can take a look at one of the sample key content videos. These are the new videos that we're creating with ClickView. There'll be one of these, at least one of these, for every topic in the series. They're short, 2 to 3 minute videos that cover the essential learning from the Australian Curriculum version 9.0, over 200 in total. For Back to School 2025, every topic in years 7 to 9, as well as about half of year 10, will have at least one key content video included, available for you to use to support your teaching and the learning of your students. As you can see, it brings a topic that something like rotations and reflections that's quite difficult for students to understand from a static textbook page to life. We can see these points literally rotating by 90 degrees around the origin and can see how that shape rotates. The wonders of video are amazing. Let's exit the video and continue on. There's a wide range of interactive quizzes, worksheets, investigations, answers, and work solutions, and much more. You're welcome to log on and take a look at any of them. In the full product, we've already loaded every downloadable resource and online quiz to the products, so they're ready to go. Let's log out of the teacher account and log back in as a student. Here I am, logged in as a student, and I can now show you how your students will use the product and how they'll complete the work you've assigned them. I'll go to the student book welcome page, and here in my notifications is the diagnostic pretest my teacher assigned me. I can see it's due today, so I'd better make a start on it. If I click on the green tile, it will open the pretest for me to complete. I click start and click through, and the pretest begins. Through the magic of editing, you can see we're flying through this. There are 25 questions in this test because it's testing all of the prerequisite knowledge I'll need to be successful in this chapter. The pretest is designed to thoroughly test my understanding of a prerequisite skill and will assess whether I need to learn the skill, practice the skill, or whether I already have the skill. As you can see, there are many different question types included in the quiz. Multiple choice, short answer, matching, drop-down list, drag and drop, even number lines. There are also many graphing question types included in algebra quizzes in later years. So it's far more engaging than the old multiple choice or short answer only quizzes that you might be familiar with. When I click submit, I realize I haven't actually finished all the questions, so I can go back and then finish that question before hitting submit. Now that the test is complete, I can see that my results are immediately available to me. Under my results, I can see how I performed overall via this graph. And if I click review results, I can see how I performed question by question and see whether I got the question right, partially right, or fully incorrect. And I can see what the correct answer is. Going back up, I can see exit the question review and see the most impressive part of the pretest, so that every student is allocated activities to complete that are designed to help them address gaps in their prerequisite knowledge. I can see here how I performed in each skill in the chapter, from counting in multiples to number lines. And the system tells me if I have this skill, if I still need to work on it, or if I need to do some catch-up work. Could do this via an interactive skill sheet, One of these is available for every topic and skill in the series. This is the Ordering and Comparing Large Numbers interactive skill sheet, which includes theory and interactive examples for me to learn or practice the skill, and then a short auto-marked quiz, so I receive immediate feedback. I can complete an interactive skill sheet as many times as I want to, whenever I want to. Going back to my results, the system also groups each student and suggested activities for them to complete both in the book and online via a personalised learning pathway report. This is a roadmap through the chapter that helps students work at their own pace. It can be accessed online as a PDF or printed. And if I scroll back up, I'll see the option where I can download my learning pathway report. Now it's time to log out of the student account and log back in as a teacher to see how the student performed. So let's do that now. I can log out of the student account and log back in as the teacher and go back into the 7 book to the welcome page. Let's have a look at the other tabs at the top of the page. The Resources tab allows me to access all of the resources included with this book without having to go through the e-reader. I can choose to just show the teacher only resources. I can also select which types of resource I want to see and scroll through the list of only those resources. For example, I can choose to view only the ClickView videos, the class tests, and the teacher notes. And now when I click apply, only those resources appear in the list. The Assigned Work tab is the next tab, and that allows me to see work that I've assigned to any of my classes. I can see how many students have completed the assignment, the start and due dates, what work is assigned, the students it's assigned to, and any message I sent about the activity. The Reports tab allows me to review student results. There are 3 kinds of reports offered for every student in Oxford Maths. The assessment report shows me how each student is performing in terms of engagement and marks. I can drill down to the individual question level for every student, and the system highlights their performance as above level, on level, or below level to help me easily identify who's doing well and who needs more support. I can turn this color coding on and off as I prefer. The curriculum report helps me to track student performance against every content description in the Australian curriculum version 9.0. Lastly, we have the skills report. This allows me to see how each student performed in the prerequisite skills on the diagnostic pretest. An important feature of this screen is that it allows me to see how the students have been grouped, above, on, or below level. As the teacher, I have the power to override the system here if I disagree with the grouping. For example, say I know that student 8 is very talented and capable, and they're always in the above level group, and they were having a really bad day the day they took the diagnostic pretest. In this case, I can reset the test so they can do it again, or just download the above level pathway report and send it to that student. As the teacher, I have control over this. So that's my brief tour of the online components of Oxford Maths Australian Curriculum and Oxford Digital. One feature that was very recently added and didn't quite make it into the video is the ability to view a single page in the e-reader. I'd encourage you to check this out when you have a look at the sample account. I'm going to pass over to Chris, who's on our sales team now, to take you over the pricing for the series. If you like what you've seen today and would like some more information, please let one of our sales team know and they'll be happy to arrange a demonstration for other members of your faculty, either online or in person. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Afternoon, everyone. Yes, thank you, Alex, for taking us through that digital and all the wonderful features. So hopefully you will enjoy those. I'm going to go through the product configurations and pricing availability. So you've got all year levels, and as Alex said, they're already available and all the digital components are ready to go. So the student book with an O book with 1 year access, there comes $75.95. There is a reactivation fee of $24.95, but you can also talk to your consultant about your particular school if you're looking to adopt for 3 years or more, and we can look at that reactivation fee. Student book O, just the digital component for a student purchase. So if it's a book list of the digital, you're looking at $49.95. But at school, institutional purchases are different pricing. So please talk to your local consultant in regards to pricing for that, and also the reactivation codes as well. We've also packaged this a great value offers. If you're looking to combine your maths with your humanities, which is business, economics, civics and citizenship, that's a tongue twister for an afternoon, geography and history all in the one book. You've got your Oxford Science and your My English all combining as a print digital offer of $173.95. So good savings there, and you've got the inclusion of digital access there, or just the pure digital only of all 4 subject areas of $109.95. But I would strongly suggest on the screen here, you do have, if you want to scan that QR code there, that will put you into touch with the consultant that looks after your immediate area. Whether you're in ACT, South Australia, Tasmania, Queensland, North or South, we'll put you in contact with the appropriate rep that looks after your school, and we'll come out and have a chat to you. Even if you're going through a third party, we can talk to you about how that sets up, provide training, etc. on the Oxford Digital, and liaise with your reseller or bookseller. Thank you very much, and I'll hand back now.
Thanks, Chris. So that's all the content that we have for today's webinar. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have if you just pop them in the Q&A for us, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. When you exit today's webinar, we'd really appreciate it if you could fill it in the feedback form that'll pop up automatically on your screen. We really take any feedback that you have as really important information to consider for any future presentations. I'll just give it a moment to see if there's any questions coming through. So it doesn't look like there's any questions coming through, and that's fine. You're more than welcome to reach out to your local sales consultant. The link that you need was on that QR code, which you'll get when we share the webinar slides with you, but it's also available in the chat today. So if you reach out to your local sales consultant, we're happy to help you with any questions that you might have about this product. And we hope that you're interested in learning more. So thank you very much for taking the time to attend today's webinar, and we hope you have a great evening and a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you.